You have them turn around, and you have them, the best, you have them unbutton the top, and they come for that quick couple of seconds. They can give you a kiss and sit on your lap, and you have them come in and kiss you, sit in, put them right on, and you choke, and you got to come real quickly. You haven't been taking like that.
Have you ever wondered what a young, virile man like Mike was doing for sex in jail? Well, the truth is, Mike was getting some in jail, thanks to this little white inmate. When he started reading books in prison, he learned how to manipulate anyone, and he started manipulating female prison guards. He convinced them to have sex with him. And there came a time in Mike Tyson's life when he started loving prison. But there is so much more to the story. It wasn't easy to have sex in prison, especially with a female prison guard. The story I'm going to tell you now is more twisted than any Netflix show you've watched. It all started when Mike saw this white guy get a visit from a girl who came in visibly pregnant. Mike thought she had somebody else's baby and was coming in to break the news to him, but it wasn't like that. They were kissing and he was tonguing her. The administration went crazy and confronted him. "You don't care that your wife is having someone else's baby?" they asked. "Hey, this is my personal business. Why are you up in my business?" he answered. So Mike asked him what the real deal was. That white guy replied, "They're my girlfriends, Mike. I've had 2 of them since I was in here. This is how you do it. You get your lady to come in wearing crotchless underwear and one of those loose summer dresses with the buttons down the front, but you have her wear it backwards so the buttons are in the back. Then you request an outside visit, and you go to the yard where they have the picnic tables set up. She sits on your lap facing away from you, and you just give it to her right there. There are no cameras out there. You just have to watch out for the one guard who's monitoring the inmates." That white guy told Mike everything, but that was the biggest mistake he ever made, one he would later regret. He never should have told Mike that stuff, because what came next was unimaginable for the entire prison. Mike thought, "Why do I have to stop my sexual activities in prison? Why do I have to stop having sex?" Instantly after that, he'd go through his fan mail and pick out the girls he liked the most. He'd write back to them, "Hey, would you be interested in visiting me? I'll send you a ticket." Mike would give them all the instructions about the loose dress and the crotchless underwear. They probably thought they were just going to do some light fooling around. But when the first girl came, Mike was already sitting in the outside yard. He couldn't get up to greet her because he was sitting there focusing on keeping himself prepared. She came over, kissed Mike, and he turned her around and boom. She could have had AIDS or anything, but Mike was just reckless. He flopped her on top of him without a condom in broad daylight. After a while, he had it down to a science. As soon as the girl got on his lap, he'd hold her hand and start stroking, so the guards couldn't even see that she was moving. If you're doing it too hard, she'd bounce up like she was on a trampoline, and that wasn't going to work. Mike started getting a lot of sex from many different women. One day, this girl from England showed up wanting to see Mike. She was a girl that Red had been corresponding with. After his old prison letter writer Buck left prison, he had a young gangbanger named Red write the letters for him. So Red was in the prison hole then and told Mike to go out and see her. But he didn't tell Mike that they had an tumultuous relationship and were beefing him. So Mike went out there thinking, this is going to be great. They sat down in the visiting room, and this girl started in on Mike. She was holding a baby. Suddenly she screamed, "Where's my diamond chain? Where's the watch I gave you? I want them back, you motherfucker!" Mike said, "Whoa, I didn't have to take this shit from some crazy lady I didn't even know." Mike called out to the guard, "I'm ready to leave," and he walked away. Then she complained to the administration, and they started an investigation. The guy handling the case came to Mike and said, "You don't know this girl, do you? She never gave you any jewelry, right?" He knew Mike had something to do with it, but they didn't want any heat from internal affairs. Mike said, "No, sir, I don't know anything about any of that. I never wrote that girl." The prison was very concerned that they might get sued, but they did some more investigating, caught Red, and shipped him out. At that time, the whole prison was taking advantage of this secret sex method until Mike got stupid. One day, he couldn't control himself. He was just laying it down and going for it. What happened was that the guard had left his post, circled around, and snuck up on Mike from behind, catching him in the act. Somebody probably ratted him out because the guards never left their position at the window. Mike got sucker punched. Around this same time, one of the girls who had visited Mike from Atlanta came out with an article in Star magazine. She claimed that Mike had gotten her pregnant in jail, and they showed a picture of her with a big belly. Thank God it was just a fake belly rigged up so she could sell the story to the rag. Mike was really relieved, but that marked the end of Mike and the whole prison's little sexual escapades. They canceled all outside visits for the entire prison. Everybody was so pissed off at Mike. They even called it the Tyson rule. When this method stopped working, Mike had to search for other ways to fulfill his desires. What happened next was even crazier than what you've heard so far. By that time, the only good guy in prison, Mike's roommate Earl, whom I also mentioned in the first part, was getting ready to get out. Before he left, he sat Mike down. He said, "Mike, when I leave, I want you to go with Wayno. He's the only good guy here. Be careful of all those other guys, Mike. You're an inmate, but those guys are convicts. They're going to do this until the day they die. Just stay with Wayno. He's not going to run you into some bullshit." Mike already knew Wayno by then, but they weren't close. They became close as soon as Wayno moved into the cell with Mike. In fact, they became so close that Wayno is still working with Mike to this day. Wayno practically ran that prison. He was in for dealing coke, but he had an IT background, so he worked processing the inmate tracking system. He was the president of Mike's dorm, the assistant coach of the varsity basketball team, and a leading member of the Islamic community there. Plus, he was from Indianapolis, so he had gone to school with a lot of the guards. He had even sold coke to some of those guards. Mike was supposed to be working in the recreation department of the prison. This role involved assisting with sports and fitness programs, allowing Tyson to stay connected with his passion for physical fitness so that he could be in the gym and train. However, most of the time, Mike was on the phone. He was a real phone hog. As soon as the count was cleared after breakfast and everyone was accounted for, he'd get on the phone. Each dorm had its own phone, and it was on a first-come, first-served basis with a sign-in sheet. Mike would have someone sign up for him and then trade them a couple of packs of cigarettes for their slot. He always told other prisoners that he had legal matters to handle and was on with his lawyers, but most of the time, he was talking to his friends and girls, and sometimes doing questionable things while listening to female voices. You know what I'm saying, right? When another inmate said, "Tyson, you've been on the phone for an hour," Mike would reply, "This is fucking legal business, okay? Go talk to the warden." Mike treated that phone like it was his umbilical cord to the outside world. He had close party friends all over the country who would talk to him anytime. One of them even had a dedicated phone line for him. This friend would go to parties, take his cell phone, and call Mike, putting girls on the line for him. And then Mike would indulge himself. You know the saying, hard times create hard men. Or, in Mike's case, hard situations. You get the idea. But there was another side of Mike Tyson developing in prison. When Mike wasn't on the phone, he was in his room reading. The judge really wanted Mike to get his GED, so he started studying for it with Muhammad Sadiq, who had become his spiritual advisor. Mike wasn't keen on math or subjects like that, so he started studying Chinese with a teacher Sadiq brought in. Can you imagine Mike learning Chinese? He actually learned enough to carry on conversations when he visited China years later. Mike was completely into reading. There's nothing better to pass the time in prison than reading a book. Wayno and Mike would read to each other in their room every night. One would have the book, and the other would use a thesaurus or dictionary to look up unfamiliar words. They even practiced using the words in sentences to lock them into memory. Mike enjoyed Will Durant's The Story of Civilization. He read works by Mao, Che, Machiavelli, Tolstoyevsky, Marx, Shakespeare, you name it. He tried Hemingway, but found him too much of a downer. He gravitated toward rebellious, revolutionary books. His favorite was Alexandre Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo, and he strongly identified with the main character, Edmond Dantes. Whenever he felt lost in prison, he'd read some Dumas. Once Wayno and Mike became cellmates, they were unstoppable. Wayno ran a store out of his room, bartering commissary items at a rate of 2-to-1. If you wanted a bag of chips but didn't have money in your commissary, you'd go to Wayno. He'd give you a bag and mark your name down, expecting 2 bags in return later. Before Mike moved in, he told Wayno, "Brother, if there's anything in here you need now, take it. Take some soup." Wayno replied, "Mike, I don't need any of that because if you give me anything, I'm just going to flip it and make some money." Mike gave him a bunch of stuff anyway. By the time Mike moved in, their store had grown so large that they had to store merchandise in other inmates' rooms. They sold the usual commissary items, cookies, cigarettes, chips, but Mike decided to use his celebrity to their advantage. One time, Maya Angelou visited Mike and took a picture with him. That night, Mike was hungry and wanted some donuts another inmate had. He showed him the picture and said, "Hey, brother, I have the queen of intellect of our people here, Maya Angelou. Look at that picture. That's worth at least $50. The guy was so touched by the photo that he went and put $10 in Mike's commissary account each time until the $50 was paid off. Mike repeated this tactic whenever someone famous visited him. Some of the female fans who wrote to him would send Mike dirty pictures of themselves. So Mike sold the pictures and the letters separately. Either someone wanted some jerk-off material or they wanted a relationship. Sometimes Mike would give them the picture and the letter together. Depending on the girl's picture, Mike would figure out which demographic would be attracted to that particular girl. If Mike had a picture from a Midwestern woodsy type girl, he'd go to one of the redneck guys and say, "Check her out. It's funny, but some of those guys wrote to those women and ended up getting married to them." Then Mike progressed this business from selling dirty pictures to phone sex. When it was 7 a.m. in Indianapolis, it was 4 a.m. in LA. The clubs were just getting out, and Mike would call his friend Collect. He'd have a few girls up at his pad, ready for action. They'd charge guys for listening to her and the girls having sex. Sometimes Mike would find out the guy's name and then tell the girl to tailor her conversation to him. "Oh, John, you turn me on. I'm getting so wet now," she'd say. John paid through the nose for that. Mike was even getting his friends on the outside laid. He had a friend in Chicago who owned the hottest club in town, and Mike would send girls who wrote to him from Chicago to his friend's club so his friend could check them out and see if they were good stuff. That was an investment in Mike's future. If they were nice, Mike would see them when he got out. Wayno and Mike were wheeling and dealing like crazy. They expanded their store to something like 7 or 8 rooms. Wayno kept the records, and if someone was reluctant to pay them back, Mike was the enforcer. "Motherfucker, give me my money," Mike would say, paying them a little visit. Needless to say, even if they had to borrow from someone else, Mike got paid. Mike and Wayno were living like kings. Wayno had all these connections to the Aryan guys who worked in the kitchen and to some of the corrupt guards who'd smuggle shit in for the inmates. So you'd never find Mike in the chow hall unless they were serving ice cream. Most nights, they'd just chill in their room, and the guards would deliver whatever food they ordered: pizza, Chinese food, Kentucky Fried Chicken, White Castle, whatever. Sometimes they even ate lobster and barbecue. Mike had a guy on the payroll. He was a guard, but smuggled food for them. Mike understood that greed was at the core of human beings. He knew that you could always pay people to do shit for you. You could buy people pretty cheap. One day, Mike said to a guard, "Yo, can you get me any bitches?" The guard didn't flinch. He stood there like, "How many you want to get?" Mike said, "Listen, it doesn't even have to be all that deep, right? Can I fuck that fucking guard right there? Do you think she's down? I'll give her $1,000. Now, the guard was thinking about his kickback. "Mike, are you serious? Because I will talk to this bitch right now. I know this bitch from the clubs, Mike. This bitch will fuck you," the guard said. Mike thought he'd say something like, "Don't worry about it. I'll try to drop it by her later." But the guard was ready to make it happen. Mike got a little nervous that he might get in trouble. Brother, you're conducting yourself like a savage," Wayno told Mike. "Go in the room and wash your face, brother. Conduct yourself like a businessman." So Mike dropped the idea. In prison, they just kept trying to break your spirit. If they saw you having a friend who was helping you do your time, they would take him away and ship him out. They did that to Wayno in the middle of the night. They sent him to Wabash, a brand new level 4 facility with a supermax. By the time Wayno left, Mike was a straight-A prisoner. He never drank the whole time he was in prison, and he didn't smoke any pot. Nobody would have sold him any, even if someone wanted some. Everyone just wanted Mike to get into shape so he could come out strong and start fighting again. But Mike couldn't give up his sex, so he started getting it from the inside. It began when they made him join the drug counseling program. If you passed the test, you'd get time taken off your sentence. So everyone, from the superintendent to Don to the inmates, encouraged Mike to take the class. Even the drug counselor approached him and said, "I can help you get 6 months taken off your time." So Mike went to the class taught by a nice lady. She was a little big, but beggars can't be choosers. Mike attended the class for a few days before she came over to check his work. Mike started whispering in her ear, "How are you doing?" He so desperately wanted to get her. But she turned around on him and started talking street. "Boy, anybody else says this to me, I'd have them shipped right out of here to Pendleton. You come in here and sexually harass me? Murderers wouldn't even come to me with that bullshit." Mike responded, "Well, I am not one of those people. I'm just a man seeing somebody that needs some help like myself. We're both in a situation where we need help. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but I just saw you come in the other day with your son. I know you guys aren't doing so well, so if I can help you, please just let me know. I'm sorry." She then told Mike about her roof caving in during the last storm, and Mike thought, "Yes, this is working." "So you've got a caved-in roof, and you've got the baby in there? Wild dogs could come in there and bite him. Anything could happen to you. You can't defend yourself. You're a single mother." She replied, "Yeah, and you're going to send somebody to fix it? How are you going to do this shit?" Mike said, "Just give me your address, and there will be a package there tomorrow." Mike ran right to the phone and called a friend in Chicago, telling him to get her 10 grand by the morning. The next day, she came in wearing a pretty dress, nice makeup, and a big smile. Mike thought, "Oh, shit!" She said, "How are you doing today, Mr. Tyson?" Mike guessed she got the package. He got so nervous because he didn't know what was going to happen next. They were in the room by themselves. She said, "You just go over to your usual desk over in the corner. Nobody can see it from the window. I'm going to bend over to correct your work, and you just stand behind me, all right?" Mike said, "Cool, cool." He was so nervous he couldn't get hard. He was worried it might be a setup. While they were trying, Mike kept looking around to see if there was a hidden camera somewhere. He was scared that any minute someone would kick in the door and accuse him of rape. He tried to put that out of his mind, but he couldn't get hard. He thought of nasty things, touched her, licked her, but nothing worked. He even tried to stuff it in, but no luck. Mike finally said, "This is just not going to work. Let's try this some other time." He went back to his dorm, but she called him later that day, and it worked out that time. Once they started, they couldn't get enough. She kept calling him back to the room. "Tyson to the school," Mike would hear on the loudspeaker. She'd call him back 3 times a day. She even called him while he was doing his road work. Mike had to tell her, "No, you can't call me when I'm running, baby. It's the only time I've got to run." If anyone asked why Mike was putting so much time into the class, she'd just say, he needs to finish his preparation for his test. She was a heavy girl, too. Mike had to pick her up and put her against the wall. Thank God Mike had been lifting weights. After a while, they did it on the desk and on the floor. Mike was having so much sex that he was too tired to even go to the gym and work out. He'd just stay in his cell all day. So guys, that was it for this video. If you want part 3, please hit the like button. If this video gets more than 3,000 likes, I'll make part 3 as soon as I can. Thank you for watching.